Welcome back to the Ascends at Boston Avenue podcast. My name is Philip Boone. I'm the Mid-High Director here at Boston Avenue United Methodist Church. And today I am joined by Shawna and her son Keelin. How are you two doing today?
Doing well.
I'm doing good.
We are on our third and final LGBTQ plus People of Faith series. And so we're going to discuss about their faith journeys and what they've experienced as an LGBTQ plus person of faith and what her son has experienced. So Shawna, I want you to tell us about your faith journey.
So my faith journey begins as far back as my earliest memories. I don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't involved in the church. I was raised in the Oklahoma City area, and my family attended a Southern Baptist church from the moment we moved to Oklahoma City when I was probably about a year old until I graduated from high school. I went on mission tours, I went on choir tours, I sang in the choir, I worked in the nursery. We pretty much spent 3 to 4 days a week at the church growing up. I went to college, and I would love to say that my faith journey stayed strong during college, but I spent a lot more time at college than I did probably playing and goofing around than I did in my faith journey. And so I maintained a personal faith journey, but I stopped going to church as much. Around that time is when I started really questioning my sexuality, where things were going in my life, and took a step back. I maintained that individual faith journey for about the next 7 or 8 years, kind of fumbling between Bible studies that I could find at Mardell's and things I could find online to study, but not really sure of where I was going to go spiritually. My family moved to Tulsa. At the time, I was married to a man, and we moved to Tulsa, and we decided that it was time to start having children, and so we went through that process. And Keelin was born, and right before he was born, we decided that we wanted to join a church that seemed to be a little bit more on the progressive side than the Baptist church that I had been raised in, but still maintaining very much a Christian core set of beliefs. So we joined a local Methodist church here in town. Keelin was baptized at that church. I became tremendously involved in that church. I was a member of the praise team. I attended weekly Bible studies. We were involved in a Sunday school class. And again, from about that time on, we're at the church 3 to 4 days a week. That was until about 2014, and I decided, my second child was now born, and I decided that it was time for me to accept my sexuality completely, not just in the world, but for myself. I came out, unintentionally, I came out on the front page of the Tulsa World, and a few weeks later, I received a phone call from a minister at the church that we'd been attending, and was told that my participation in the church had been ceased, and that it would require me getting permission from the senior minister and from the bishop before I would be allowed to return to service in that church.
So to lead anything, to sing, any type of leadership role? Anything.
I couldn't sing in the choir. I couldn't help out with the children's ministry, and both of my sons were at the time, involved in the choir, so I couldn't even come to their practices until I received permission from that senior minister. So I've never really stepped down from a challenge, so I sent emails seeking that permission, and multiple emails were simply just ignored. Finally went to a higher level and was told that they would stand with the decision of the church. So we left. We had some long conversations with especially Keelin. Keelin had really taken the brunt of the decision to ask us to leave. So we went without a church for quite a while.
How did that affect you? Her being told to step down from leadership positions. What were you thinking at this time?
I was before this, I was just thinking that we were all good, nothing was going on, and all of a sudden I was actually, I think, walking down over to my practice for my solo, and this woman walks up to me and says, "Your mother and you will not be able to come back to this church as she has chosen a different path than the way that Christians would." And I honestly thought that I had done something wrong and that it was my fault that I caused my mother to not be allowed in here. And soon enough I learned that it wasn't my fault at all, and really it wasn't her fault at all either. It was just for me at the same time, because at that time the church was my world. I had gone there before I was even born. Before I even walked, I was going into the church, and I was, what I would say, participating, since I didn't really know anything. But that was where I was almost raised every single weekend. And suddenly I was told that I can't come back because my mother has chosen a different path.
What brought you to Boston Avenue?
So we left that church, and we really struggled with what we were going to do. Keelin wanted nothing to do with churches. We went through counseling. He was pretty young. I mean, we talk about children enduring trauma and what trauma looks like to children, and we're talking about a kid who was 8 years old who had just been told that his mom was going to hell, and that Christianity does not have space for his mom. So we went through a lot of counseling, a lot of discussions with even some Christian counselors who were more on the progressive side. But for a long time, even passing a church, stopping at a church, there were times when we, because of a financial situation, needed to get some help. And we couldn't go to church buildings because he would have a very physical, emotional reaction just being in the parking lot of the building. So we paused going to church, and we eventually found a Unitarian church in town that was kind of the training wheels that the family needed, and it was a great fit for us. We found an ability for Keelin to find himself in that pattern of attending and being a part of a community, but it wasn't what we wanted as a family. About that time, some of Keelin's friends were talking about going through confirmation, and so we kind of started researching it, telling him what that meant and what that would mean for him, but he still wasn't all bought in. He was struggling at the time with, is God real? Is God not real? Why would God let people say and do these things to people? Or why would God let us go to a church if he knew that we were going to be kicked out of it? And so we had read a lot of things. We had met a lot of people. And we had Boston Avenue on our radar. And then my wife and I are both long-distance runners, and we had signed up to run the 5K that is associated with the Pride celebrations here in Tulsa. And so we were running, and it was 175 degrees that day, and we were exceptionally thirsty, and we're, struggling, and when are we going to get to the water stop? And we look up, and suddenly we see this huge water stop, but it's put on by a Methodist church. And I kind of laughed. I grabbed my cup of water and I held it to the light. What little bit of light happens at night? And I'm like, what's the catch here? Why is a Methodist church? It's in the same town that I just recently been kicked out of one, giving me water. I mean, is it poison? What's the catch? There's got to be a catch. And so I gulped down the water and I made it down to the turn, and I'm like, okay, I'm still breathing. I haven't died yet. We're okay. And by the time I turned around and I came back, it really had got to me that, we talk about living water, and there's all these symbolic, beautiful things about water. I'm like, why is this church the one that's offering water in the middle of a silly 5K? So I stopped and I talked to a couple of people and later found out that they were ministers. And I straight up walked up to them and said, what's the catch? Is this your way of, we're going to stop you and tell you that you're wrong? And is this going to be another church telling me I'm going to hell and that you're not welcome? And the response was phenomenal. I mean, just support and love, absolute blessings all the way down the road. And so we finished the race, and I don't remember anything else about that night. There's a huge street festival. I mean, Pride's just a beautiful celebration. The one thing I do remember is my wife and I sitting at the finish line, and we both turned to each other and said, let's go visit. And so we visited that Sunday. We didn't waste any time. I wasn't going to bring the boys to church for the first few weeks because I wanted to make sure it was safe for me. I wasn't going to bring them back into another situation where they were going to be told by another church to go away. And I actually set up an appointment with David, and we sat and we chatted for hours. I told him my story about what had happened to me, and I said, I need your reassurance that this is safe for my kids. Say what you want to me, do what you want to me, but don't destroy my children because their faith is already very shaky. And he reassured us that this is absolutely a place of love. And so now, it's a couple of years later, we're now on our second, Pride Parade since then, the second water stop since then, and now we're the ones handing out the water. And it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience for our family to stand in the shadows of such hatred and such vile things being said and feel this kind of love is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm so glad you ran the 5K. Oh. I mean, I don't run unless someone's chasing me, so I'm impressed that you would do that. But I'm glad that you did, so you were able to see the water stop. Keelin, what was your reaction when your mom said, "I found a church. Let's go to this church, Boston Avenue," because your faith at that time was kind of shaky after the other church, what they told you, what they told your mom. So how did you feel when your mom mentioned, hey, I've got another church for you? What was your thought going into that?
It was a bit easier than if we just went from the previous from the church that kicked us out straight to Boston Avenue, because we first went to a different church that was a lot more inviting and a lot more accepting. And whenever that happened, it kind of eased my opinion of if churches will accept us. So Boston Avenue seemed like I might be okay there because it's somewhere new, and if mom's been there and she's been accepted there, then I might as well have the ability to be there and feel all right there, because my main problem was feeling if my mom wasn't safe there, then I wasn't safe there, because I felt like if someone had an opinion of my mother, then they would have that opinion of me, and as soon as that fact was just weighed off, then I knew that might be a good place to go.
Well, and you also, the one thing that I really loved is that when we stepped in the doors the very first Sunday, there were some pretty amazing leaders in the LGBT community that met us when we came here, that also come here and attend here. And some of these leaders, so for example, Toby, who works, with the Oklahomans for Equality, the boys have been raised with him kind of being an uncle. It's there where he goes. I mean, there's smiles and hugs and love and support abound. And so by seeing those people and those leaders, both of the boys just kind of settled in. They, I didn't notice any of the stress or the anxiety that we had in years past. And then we also kind of upped the ante by making sure that we came on a Sunday that the youth choir was singing, and that kind of roped him in.
And a lot of it has to do with trust, because he knows that you wouldn't want to go to a church that didn't show you the love that you needed and that you deserved. So a lot of it was also trust in what you going to the church and how you felt about it. Shawna, what does the church do to affirm your family?
I think the greatest thing that they do for me is, and for my family, is that they involve us in the conversation. It's like any other marginalized group or organization. There's so much talk about you. There's things, what are we going to do for the LGBT community? And what are we going to do for these families? And to be sat at the table and to be a part of that decision making and that ministry has been immensely powerful. It's given us an opportunity to not only look at ourselves in the greater scheme of the LGBT community here in Tulsa, but also on a worldwide stage. It's given us a chance to see the changes that are being made from the inside. We're both science nerds, and we were talking on the way here about endothermic versus exothermic reactions. Mm-hmm. And, having that ability to make change from the inside has been, tremendously helpful in us. It's taken the victimhood away from us. I'm no longer a victim of what that church did. I'm an agent for change, and I'm an agent for love, and I'm an agent for showing, God's kindness and mercy and the passion of everything that he offers to us from the inside.
One thing I'm really enjoying from this series that we're doing is it's fun hearing from people who might have not heard what the other had to say, the same theme. It's being invited to the table. I mean, as a straight cisgender male, I should not be making all the decisions for someone in the LGBTQ plus community because it doesn't affect me directly. So having people in the LGBTQ, you all deserve to have a place at the table and to help with that.
Well, and I think it's really important for us to also notice that everyone has that role. Mm-hmm. You as a minister, you are ministering to a son of an LGBT mother. And I tell Keelin quite a bit, you have amazing privilege. You are being raised as a, Caucasian cisgendered, male who at 13 years old doesn't know who he's going to love, hopefully, because he's 13. But that gives you a degree of privilege to be able to apply because you have that, but yet you also have the hearts of the people who have raised you or who you minister to, kind of writing on your shirts at all times. And so it makes it really powerful when you can play that role both as an agent for myself, but also representative of someone who you minister to.
Yes, definitely. Keelin, what do you need for church to be a part of your life?
Mainly for me, for church to be part of my life is something that mainly it's just people accepting who I know. Like, if my family can't be accepted, then I don't want that to be part of my life, because I want my family to be there because they support me every single bit of the way, even whenever I don't get my homework done and I am failing almost.
That never happens, right? You always get your homework done, right?
My mom says I...
You don't have to answer that.
But, like, my mom just takes me to Starbucks and we all get it done in a couple minutes or maybe even an hour. It depends. But it just, with my family there, everything's a lot more easier. Everything can be, basically, the pain can be lowered in a way. It's, them being there, it's like an easy mode for life, almost.
Shawna and Keelin, both of you can answer this if you have an answer. Where do you see the hope for the future of the United Methodist Church?
I see it sitting beside me with the kids. Being a 40-plus-year-old member of the LGBTQ community, when you go to Pride or you go to events, you realize that we are now in that stage where there are more people, more agents of change that are younger than us, than there are of us. I think that the greatest hope lies in our youth and our children. As a teacher, I raise my students every day up. I lift them up and I teach them to be better humans today than they were the day before. And that doesn't mean anything huge. That's not life-changing. That doesn't mean that today you're giving up all of your earthly possessions and going to go serve in Uganda. It could be that you open one more door for one more person that day than you did before. And I truly believe that children follow the path of the adults that they see. And I think that as long as we continue to have ministers in the United Methodist Church who understand that Jesus was relational, everything he did had to do with relationships. He shared his love, he shared his goals, he shared his purpose for humanity by connecting with people on the most loving and intimate levels, never by calling them names, never by telling them the horrible things that he thought about them. It was all based on seeing people having inherent value and beautiful worth and seeing God's grace shining back. I think it would have been really neat to be Jesus, to have seen his Father's masterwork looking him in the eye every day. And we get to see that when we look at the kids that we are raising up in the church and we look at the young adults that we're raising up in the church. That's where my hope lies, because they're doing amazing things and they are showing love and they're showing compassion, not just to the LGBTQ community. They're showing it in West Tulsa right now, cleaning up floodwaters. They're showing it by going on missions. They're showing it in choir tours. That's where the work happens. And as long as we continue to raise up children whose entire purpose is to show God's love and his compassion, I think the church is going to be just fine in the long run.
For me, I truthfully believe, like what my mom said, is that the young people are what caused the big change now, because it's kind of like that joke online where the kids are like, we need to save our planet, our climate is dying, but all the boomers are like, well, I won't be alive in that time, so it's not my problem. But in reality, it might be their problem, because our planet's dying. But whenever all the young people get together and they're raised right and they know what their purpose is, then they're the people who get things done in life. They're the ones who solve all the conflicts, and they're just the ones who we need to raise right and raise correctly, or else it's not going to go well.
Do you have any last comments either one of you would like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about that was really important for Keelin was that, he just went through confirmation last year. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about it over the last few days about, why would you choose to be confirmed into a church not knowing if they were going to accept your family? Because I don't think I would have had that courage. I think I would have probably held back and waited and said, I'm going to wait till they figure out what they're going to do, and then maybe I'll go through confirmation. But he boldly went through, even though his faith was questioned. And I think the most beautiful thing that he said to me back was that, if I don't join the church, that's just one more number that can't be counted for helping people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my big hope and my big message, and would be my final comment would be, it's really easy to run away right now. I would not doubt, question, or even look down upon a member of the LGBTQ community who decides that right now the United Methodist Church is not the place for them. It's scary. It's really hard hearing over and over that your family is incompatible with Christian teachings. What does that even mean? It would be so simple to just walk. Mm-hmm. But that's the beauty of our faith, is that if we stay, we don't have to be heroes today. And we haven't had to be. We are this little family that is surrounded by so much love. And that's all we have to do right now. And that's my encouragement to LGBTQ members who are thinking about leaving. let your church wrap you in love and just sit and hold space and be there and be one to be counted in the fight.
Yeah, you have to be there to fight. Like all the walkouts at all the schools. There was recently in India a walkout for all the bus drivers because the ride cost was increasing so much for taxes. So instead of the bus drivers stopping and not driving, what they chose to do is they chose to completely do their routes, keep on doing it, but they refused to take the money of the people who were riding because they knew that if they stopped because what they thought was happening was wrong, then it would hurt more people than what it would be solving, because they would hurt people who needed to get to their jobs and people who needed to live and pay for their houses, because they would just walk away. But because they knew that if they stopped it would cause more problems, they chose to stay there and fight while still being inside.
Excellent. I had not heard about that.
Deep thoughts.
This has been Deep Thoughts from Keelin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been the final part of our LGBTQ plus People of Faith series. I hope you were able to enjoy it and you maybe learned a little bit. This has been Philip Boone. I'm the Mid-High Director here at Boston Avenue, and we are at 1301 South Boston Avenue. Please check out our Facebook page to learn what's going on at Boston Avenue. And we will talk to you guys next time. Thank you.